Well, hello everybody. Let me adjust my chair, and welcome to another edition of Derp Your Hooves. So, today I guess I'm going to teach you a little bit about runways, and I decided to choose Denver as a great example of not knowing where you're landing and not knowing where you're going, especially at night, because Denver apparently has 12 runways. If you count that each runway has each direction, so it actually has 6 runways, and they all basically have a direction. So right now we are on runway, I believe they said we are on runway 26, correct? And we are headed west. And the way that I can tell that is if I take my mouse and I look at my, what's the label call it? I mean, I call it a compass. It's like a directional finder, navigation gauge. I forget the official name for it. You can tell I'm not a professional pilot. So here it is. We are currently facing 260 degrees because the front of the plane is facing 260 degrees, which is 270 is west, so we're actually a little bit southwest. And I actually have a runway map here that I will post in the comments because it's actually really difficult in full screen mode to go show you the map, but I have 2 monitors, so I have a runway map. You can also go to the VFR map if you're in a plane that doesn't have like a GPS, doesn't have like the GTN 750 or any kinds of fancy electronics, and it shows you right there. So it looks exactly identical on my map. I just know what runway I'm on. So here's our 6 runways that are actually 12 runways, and that's our position. So you can imagine that if you were flying into this airport, just how confusing it might be. So right now we are in just basically a simple Cessna 152. I'm using a different version than what the sim has to offer. So let's actually scroll down here and have a look and turn on our landing lights just so that we can see out in front of us. Alright. We can turn off that spotlight. And, I mean, the standard Cessna 152 doesn't offer lighted gauges like this one. We're going to give it a notch of flaps. So the other thing to mention here is that, and I know you can't see it because I'm doing it at night, we're at Denver, so, Denver's known as the Mile High City, and the elevation is different. So our mixture should actually be a little different than what it is to get some power. And another fun little note about, elevation and airplanes, at least I had read on, is that at a higher altitude the runways are usually longer because it takes longer to land. It has something to do with the air being thinner. So, little sciencey facts coming from someone who's not very sciencey, but I mean, all principles of flight. So anyhow, if we go ahead and we look down here, and we look at we concentrate on the 4 instruments of the 4 gauges to my left, the big circles. You have your airspeed indicator, underneath that you have your, I believe it's your, I don't know, it's like your roll indicator, and then I think you have like your pitch indicator on top of it. And actually what I can do is if I can just level out a little bit with the trim, I can bring the mouse back. So I don't know exactly what they're called here. You know, I read a book, and you know, you figure that I would have learned by it, but hey, I've done a pilot, so you know, this would be my speed gauge, and this would be my rolly gauge, right? You know, but it tells you right here, airspeed indicator, um, attitude indicator is that gauge. Um, this obviously is your, you know, your heading compass, and this is your, you know, your turn coordinator. That's what it's called. So anyhow, those are our gauges, and we actually just did a totally unintentional turn where we rolled 90 degrees pretty much from where we were, and we are now facing, if we're 90 degrees out, then we are 180 because we are headed south. So this actually has to do with a skill that a lot of people don't use in everyday life, which is called using a compass. And I'm not going to try and sound too condescending here. I mean, I'm not really a big compass user myself, because hey, I have GPS in today's modern day and age, and you know, what do I need to know? Northwest, southeast, you know, my directions. And anyhow, so well, if you're flying a plane, it's kind of important to know what direction you're heading in, because obviously there are not street signs. So, because, you know, there's not really streets that you're flying on, you're flying in the air. So, you know, us being people at one point a long time ago, we learned how to navigate the globe by using a compass, and also, you know, by using stars. But, you know, being all sciencey, you can use a compass to tell what your bearing is, what your direction is, where you're going, where you want to go. And I mean, I'm not going to make it overly complicated. I'm going to make it simple. So we're actually flying around an airport that has, you know, runways pretty much in every direction, north, east, west, and south. You really only need 2 runways, you know, or 4 runways. However you want to think about it, you actually need 2 actual runways, because each runway has 2 directions, usually. Some airports are exceptions. So you'd only really need 2 runways headed in one north to south and one east to west to be able to take off and land in all 4 directions on the compass. I'm just going to kind of fly around here and, you know, hopefully not pester, just circle the airport, and hopefully I'm not being too much of a pest to the other simmers who are flying, because I turned off nameplates, because you really shouldn't circle an airport in real life. But hey, so let's kind of go over that too. Oh, that's not good at all. Excuse me. Just gassy all the time, so I guess we'll just keep those in the video. So again, I just kind of want to keep something in mind here, and you know, and it's kind of a nasty comment that I read, you know, on some Facebook pages and some flight sim forums about, you know, oh, who thinks the sim is real? You know, well, so, you know, I'm sure I touched on this at one point before, but not all of us have a private pilot's license. Not all of us can obtain a private pilot's license, or have the funds to do so, or the means to do so, or, you know, perhaps some of us also may have some kind of medical condition that prevents us from ever obtaining a private pilot's license. Not necessarily a sport license, but a private pilot license. So we aren't as fortunate as others, and, you know, this sim is actually pretty realistic, you know, photographically, as it can be. I'm not going to defend the sim so much. But no, the flight models on a lot of these airplanes are not totally realistic, and from my understanding, they're not really study worthy if you're trying to get your private pilot's license. You know, some of the layouts aren't even correct, but pretty much the basic fundamentals of flying are correct. They might be off a little bit, and I'm just kind of constantly looking to my left as I circle the airport and be a nuisance here. As I ramble. So now we're actually headed in a northerly direction. So if we were headed totally dead north, we would be going 360. So you want to think of a compass as a clock with hands. You know, and actually that would be More for what pilots had done, like, say World War II days, and some of the fighter pilots today still do it. The clock system is actually different from the compass system, but it's the same kind of purpose or idea where you have a circle that you're using to navigate. And in that circle, a circle is 360 degrees around. It starts at 0, well, 1, but it starts at 0 and it ends at 360 being pretty much 0. So that's how you make a circle, and half a circle would be 90, and a quarter of a circle would be... Yankee, leaving my airspace frequency change approved. Quarter of a circle would be 90. Oh, look at that, I hit the wrong button. So see, I'm kind of a clown like that.
Delta, Echo Romeo Papa. Yankee frequency change.
Not seeing where my fingers are positioned on the keyboard. Because, if this was a real plane, I could just push the mic button and speak to the air traffic controller. I wouldn't have to fumble around with preset keys. So anyhow, more back to the compass. Compass, yes, it's a circle. It's 360 degrees. North is 360. South, which is half of 360, is 180. East is 90 because that's a quarter. And 3/4 is west, which is 170, correct? So, 270. See, I'm not that bright when it comes to some things. So 270 is west. And that's how you can remember your 4 major directions, and you can see that I don't have them memorized. Not because I don't really use a compass that much myself either, except for to fly in this sim. And I'm sure that if I was like Army infantry or something like that, I would still have to know how to use a compass. And I'm just going to kind of continue to circle the airport here. So basically, we are making a big circle, and as we make a big circle and we slowly turn here at night, and let's see if I guess the RPMs look okay. Where's my RPM gauge? Yeah, that looks fine. So the air-fuel mixture is fine. So anyhow, we're using our basic principles of flight here, at least for navigation. So, I don't know exactly when all the GPS stuff came out. I remember seeing it in airliners at least, I guess 30 years ago, when they started having screens and all kinds of different displays. And you didn't have what are referred to today as steam gauges for whatever reason. They're called steam gauges. I guess because they look like little steam gauges where they have a needle and so they're not fancy LCD, TFT, are they even TFT screens anymore? But they're not fancy LCD displays and electronic, which, by the way, from my understanding, in some of today's more modern aircraft, some of the, like the Garmin G1000s are, better, I guess, than some of these old-fashioned gauges, but, so I'm going to actually chime in on that here. And I know that the aviation industry is held to a completely different standard when it comes to repair and maintenance of the aircraft versus, say, auto repair, where pretty much auto repair, it's on you. And if the car's not driving or you get into an accident, big whoop-de-doo, you can pull over, or, it's still, some of these repairs in automobiles are pretty dangerous, even by some mechanics, not just people in their driveways. But, yeah, there's FAA certifications, and we're just not going to get into the details of that. But the aviation industry actually requires a much higher standard of accountability for repairs, even to private planes, not necessarily just airliners. And, I am also well aware, with people being people, that there are planes that are up there flying in the sky that, just don't meet standards and shouldn't be flying. And, hey guys, that's the real world, that's not the sim world. So let's pull our head back out of Fantasyland and focus on the Fantasyland we're in, but at the same time it being a reality, which is this really cool simulator. So here we are, after my little ramble. Sorry, maybe I have ADD or something. What do I know? And so now I'm headed west. So I'm pretty much headed the same way I was when I took off, because I was headed what? I was 260. I think that was the runway direction. So I'm just kind of circling the airport. And again, I'm just kind of being a nuisance because I shouldn't circle the airport like this um, to make this flight sim video. So as I was rambling, which I really shouldn't have been rambling, and on my little tangents. So if I'm headed, let's see, if I'm headed 240 degrees, then that means there should be 2 runways that run. Well, actually, there should be 4 runways that run it. But they have 16 left and 17 left on the map, and I'll actually post the map. So, you know, if you were to actually fly this sim, trying to be a little bit realistic about it, you would use the air traffic control to take off and land. And I know that there are other air traffic control programs that you can use to take off and land, but in Microsoft Flight Simulator 2020, you have the built-in air traffic control program, and some people actually use it, and some people actually kind of get a little tiffed. Oh, look, I had my flaps a quarter notch the whole time. That's going to affect how I fly. People get a little tiffed when they're actually trying to do that, and other people are just flying around, you know, landing on runways. And so I'm going to say, if you actually want to study and you want to avoid that, don't use live traffic. Because people are out here on the sim having fun, and they might not necessarily be like, oh, I'm going to take this seriously. They're just kind of putting around. And really, I mean, that's kind of what the sim's also for. It's for everybody. So you're going to get people like that. And so I hear there's ways to block them and whatever else. Now, so here we are again, and we're just kind of flying around. So I'm going to kind of stick to what I was doing here. And I am going to, see, it works. I complain about these updates too because they change things. So here we are on the VFR map, and we're actually here, and we are headed south. So if I'm headed south, there's 2 runways here and a runway that I'm about to cross. So that runway would be 7 and 25 that I'm about to cross, and there's 34 left, and I'm actually headed in what direction? I'm actually headed in 16, so 16 right and left should be the 2 runways that I was parallel to. So what I'm going to do here, and you can actually see that right here if I just kind of, there I am, see, woohoo, and I'm crossing, what am I crossing? I'm crossing runway 7 and runway 25 on the map, but they're not labeled here. Or are they? No, they're not. So anyhow, so I kind of want to just show you that. There's the IFR map and this crazy looking runway, and yes, I know it looks like a swastika, and you know, whatever. I don't know why they did that, but you know, let's not get all, you know, conspiracy theory about it. It is what it is. So anyhow, let's go ahead and let's pull up the air traffic control and nearest airport list. So this is how you'd use that, and obviously we're at Denver. We want to land at Denver, and it's turn to Denver Tower, and I want to have a full stop landing.
Denver Tower, Cessna Delta, Echo Romeo Papa. Yankee is 4 miles southwest, 9,300 feet with India to land.
Cessna Delta, Echo Romeo Papa. Yankee Denver Tower. Altimeter 29er.9er, 2 wind 262 at 7. Enter left traffic, runway 25.
Okay, so let's see. I would have to say that I want to enter left runway 25. There's 24, so 25 would be that way, and I am flying this way. So I'm going to acknowledge that.
Fly left traffic, runway 25, Cessna Papa, Yankee.
And at an airport like Denver here, it gets kind of confusing because runway 25 is actually going to be a westerly facing runway. Let's take a look. So runway 25, so here we are circling the outside of the airport, and runway 25 will be looks like it's going to be this runway, because runway 25 actually starts here and goes in. So I would say this is going to be runway 25. And we're here as we circle around. So we're going to go ahead and circle in, and it's because I have a labeled map on the bottom. And I can't visually see which one runway 25 is. So if I'm looking at the ground, I am going to have to say that it looks like that's runway 25 down there to my left. Because they said what? Runway 25. They said make left runway 25. They didn't say runway 25 left or 25 right. They said make left runway 25. So the directions were to keep going left until I come to runway 25, which is pretty much, as I can understand, being a full circle. And I may actually just pull a derpy landing and land on the wrong runway, but you know, accidents happen, especially in places like this. So if I were to turn the live weather and live time off, I'm sure we'd be able to see the runway markings at the end of the runways, and we would know what runways we are facing. But I can also look at my map that is on another monitor, and I can tell that, let's see, I am headed north, so runway 25 is actually going to be, yeah, it's going to be that little one right there, all by itself, off the wing. So I want to turn into runway 25, and I'm going to do it Derp your Hooves style, where I'm not going to continue to make this wonderful full circle. And I have my landing light on, by the way, and I have it on for a reason. So it also tells me that the elevation of runway 25 is 5,355 feet. Now, why is that important? Well, because we're obviously at one of the very high elevation airport, probably one of the most high elevation airports, at least in the country, United States, that I know of. I'm sure there's other airports that are higher. So I'm going to kind of do this really sloppy turn and come around to face 25, which is right there, and hopefully air traffic control is going to tell me.
Cessna Papa, Yankee wind 262 at 7. Cleared to land runway 25.
And so what I did here was I actually used my flaps to slow down fully, because I am at, what's my altitude? My altitude's almost double that of the runway, so don't land like this and don't overstress the aircraft. Full flaps, cut back on the throttle.
Yankee, did you hear my last transmission?
Yes, I did hear you.
Cleared to land runway 25 Cessna Papa, Yankee.
So I'm now coming around to land on the right runway, and wow, that's like a Scooby-Doo, a Raggy thing there with too many R's. So I was using full flaps. Let's go down 2 notches, because I think the 152 has a stall speed of like 40 knots or something, or 30 knots, something really low, and I don't want to stall. So here I am, and I'm coming around, and my flaps are up, and my trim is obviously set a little nose up, and I'm still picking up speed. And now I am facing 270 for the most part, so we want to pull over a little bit, because this orientation for this runway is like 2526, but it's actually runway 25. So we're going to come in. Yeah, and now I have no flaps. So let's give it a notch of flaps. And no, I may not be totally centered on the runway when I land, but you know, that's initially what you would really like to do if you want to take this a little more seriously, as if you were actually flying a real plane, that you always want to try and land center line. Not so easy to do. And of course you want to land on the right runway, and we're trying to do all the above. And so here we are. And we're coming in. Too high. See, there's the runway numbers right there. Okay. And I'm floating down. And floating down. And I'm doing that on purpose. And hopefully I don't bounce. Bouncing is a big no. Okay, let's see. And not center, but still.
Cessna Papa, Yankee exit, runway when able.
Okay. And I've got my landing lights on, not my taxi lights, but that's fine. So. I mean, so if anyone out there is studying for their private pilot's license and they want to use this as a supplement, you know, I know I keep hearing X-Plane is, you know, has more study level aircraft than this, so perhaps that could benefit some people. Otherwise, I don't know, maybe Microsoft.
Yankee exit, runway when able.
Yeah, well, I gotta find a taxiway, so just chill. Right now I'm not seeing any taxi lines, see? To my left or to my right. So, don't worry about it. We're going to get off the runway, the active runway. Okay, so there's a taxi line to come on. And let's see if we can find one to depart.
Cessna Papa, Yankee exit, runway when able.
Yepers. I'm trying, imaginary person. Sorry. They're not imaginary. Computers and AI is very real. So I shouldn't say that. Because computers may develop feelings one day and then have fun when you upset them. Oh, that's another weird tangent of mine. But here we go. And I'm just kind of cautiously bebopping here down the runway.
Cessna Papa, Yankee exit, runway when able.
Yeah, I heard you. Again, I heard you. So I'm actually just going to stop here to make you happy and look at the runway marker sign and see, no. Oh, look, I don't think that there is actually a taxiway that I can turn off at right here. Is there? No, there's not. So thank you very much for your concern and, you know, wanting to clear the runway as fast as possible, but I'm not just pulling off into the dirt. There's our that little yellow stripe. There it is.
Cessna Papa, Yankee exit, runway when able.
Just relentless. Get off the runway.
Cessna Papa, Yankee contact ground on 131.175.
Little Cessna 152. Make room for someone else. This is a busy airport, and you're messing things up. Okay, and so I guess we cross what I would consider to be the safety line as we're taxiing. And now I can push the magic
Cessna
button
Papa, Yankee, please acknowledge.
to please acknowledge. See, push the
131.175 Cessna Papa,
push it
Yankee.
twice. So there we are. And actually, I really shouldn't just kind of park it on a taxiway, but again, this is a sim, so I'm not going to bore you guys by going all the way to GA parking. and there really is nobody coming. So I'm gonna commit a my bad and sit here and just kind of say, oh look, there's our little 152. Our fun little 152 with our taxi lights on. So I mean that's pretty much it on top of my ramblings of my own personal moral beliefs and ethics. But there you go. I'm gonna actually post at least a link to where you can get some little runway maps. So if you actually want to make it a little more realistic and fly with the built-in air traffic controller, or you try flying with some of the other third-party air traffic control programs which are out there, which I haven't used yet, you can go on the wonderful World Wide Web and do Google searches and whoever your preferred search engine is, and type in airport runway map with the airport name or the VOR name, and it will bring you up a nice little map with some of them are nice, some of them aren't, but at least it'll direct you to that, so that if you want to make this a little more realistic for yourself, you can pull up these maps and you can land on the right runways and take off from the right runways, which is a step in a direction of being a little more serious about this versus it just being kind of an old, who remembers the old stand-up cabinets and arcades where you'd pump quarters into them? Well, those would be gone too. So it makes it less of a video game and more of a simulator. There you go. I hope it was useful. Hopefully I'm not being too snarky today with my comments in this video. Anyhow, if you guys like what you saw, feel free to like, subscribe, and share my videos. And honestly, guys, I really do look forward to seeing you in the sky. Happy virtual flying.